Hey everyone at Amplify You family, welcome to the show. My name is Michelle Abraham. I am your host. Today I am joined with one of our podcasters. Her name is Jennifer Takagi. I always mess that up. Sorry, Jennifer. And she's an executive leadership and communication coach. She teaches others how to play well at work, which I love this about her. And it's so that you can drive better performance from the people that they lead. So increase profitability and create a purposeful workplace where people want to come and play and in the end become more productive. I love that, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We've had the pleasure of knowing you for the last few years, and I'm just excited for you and about your show because there's some exciting things happening, isn't there?
There is. I always love talking to you, Michelle, because you always give me more good news.
That is awesome. So the name of your podcast is New Manager Media. So manage right from the start. So tell us a little bit about why you wanted to start it, where that came from, what that's all about.
Well, as entrepreneurs, we often have our businesses evolve over time. And originally, I really wanted to be the one training those CEOs to have them do the right thing, manage right. And what I've learned in my over 5 years of having my own business is that you really need to get them sooner. You need to get them when they're first walking in the door, when they're first stepping into their first management role. Because we can all be leaders, and a lot of times people are leaders without the title of director, manager, supervisor, but they lead by example. And then they step into a management role with pretty much no training. It's like the next progression. And so I actually came up with the name in conversation with you, Michelle. You helped name the podcast based on our conversations. And it's New Manager Media because I want the people who are the new managers. Let's train them right. I love to share stories about my mistakes and missteps as a manager and a leader and help you skip those steps. Learn from my mistakes. Don't just make them on your own. And that way, when they get to be the CEO, we're not dealing with bullies. We're not dealing with inappropriate behavior. I had quite a few managers who loved to slap their hands on the desk and cuss at everybody. And, that just does nothing but create a lot of stress in the workplace. So I want to get them fresh and start when they first are stepping into that role.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. I feel like that's so needed too, because we're coming across a new kind of employee, younger generation. They're kind of different than older generation. They don't put up with as much. They talk back more, right? But they're definitely things that you've learned. So you used to travel a lot and speak at different conferences and to different organizations. But one thing that I read that you said is that you found that although they were all different organizations, they all had one thing in common, is that the people in the organizations were frustrated. In that although the cultural landscapes and the organizational landscapes had changed, the challenges were all still the same. So can you talk about a few of those challenges that you kind of see as being the biggest challenges that a new manager might face when they're starting out in their job?
Well, the first thing is when you're a manager, 80 to 90% of your time is spent on employee issues. Now, it can be they need training. It can be that they're a problem child that you have to deal with the disciplinary side of it. It can be that you stepped into a bad culture. Many trainings I've been to, they're all presented as if you get to hand pick this perfect team. And typically, you don't. You inherit whatever you get. So the first main thing is everybody has people problems, and it is your whole day. So if you just put on your big girl panties, your big boy shorts, and understand that that is your job. Dealing with people is going to be your job. That's what you're there to do. That's number one. Number two, a lot of the problems that happen in an office are due to personality conflicts. And if you take the time to understand your personality, your behavioral styles, how other people perceive you, whether you're evolved enough to figure that out yet or not, then you can see how that could cause a problem with a staff member. And so one of the things I teach in my consulting business is DISC behavioral profile, and it is how you deal with problems, people, compliance, and the steadiness of the routine of an office. And we all fall in a different category. We all have one that we embrace more than others. And when you understand your behavior and how you're perceived, and you can understand your staff, then you can have more effective communication because you avoid some of the pitfalls. Like, I am not a detail-oriented person, but I had bosses that were, and it used to make me really mad that I had to give them a spreadsheet with every single little thing on it, and I couldn't just give them the total numbers. It was like show your work in math kind of stuff. I hated that, but when I understood that that is really what they had to have to wake up in the morning, I could give it to them and quit being so frustrated. So the next piece of that is how people handle change. And we all handle change differently. It's going to happen in your organization. It can be super little, like we're changing a form, or it can be sweeping, like we're going to do business differently. And so understanding yourself and others, understanding how people respond to change, and just knowing that dealing with people is your new job.
Awesome. It's funny because I am now managing a team of people in my business in the podcasting space. And it's interesting because I listen to what you say in your show. And I think there's so many interesting things that you say, especially about the personality things. And I can relate so much to being that person who does not need detail, does not do details. I do not do details, but I've had to hire somebody that does do details because in podcast management and podcasting, things that we're doing is very detail oriented. And so having that person on my team that is different personality wise than I am with a different skill set is so important. So a lot of your show, I pick up really great tips for our business because I am the new manager in coming into, but we're also creating this new work environment. We've got 5 different people working from 5 different remote locations, and we're trying to come together as a team and be a team. And, when you're not physically next to that person either, it's a bit challenging. But I think understanding the different personalities and where their roles would fit perfectly with what I love being an entrepreneur because you can actually create that person's role based on their personalities, which is awesome. So I know for sure to give all the detail stuff to Aaron, and I know for sure to give all the people-oriented stuff to Troy, and just different people do different jobs. And I love that I'm able to create that within our team. It's so cool.
Yeah, when you get to pick your team, you get to hire the people who do that well. Mm-hmm. And just a tiny bit of history on my lack of details. When you take the DISC profile, you're scored, and it's like 0 to 100. And in the compliance piece, and I need compliance people in my world. These are the attorneys, the CPAs, the people who basically are going to keep me out of jail. That's kind of an easy way to look at it. We need those people. Well, I worked in housing, either in the private sector or federal government for many years, and all we did was follow rules and comply with federal law, state law, city guidelines. And the highest, I've taken the test several times, and the highest I've ever scored is 8%. I got 8 out of 100. And someone said, how did you have such a wonderful career all those years when, you almost couldn't comply to save your soul? And I said, because I'm a people person, and I didn't want to let anybody down. So I could suffer through doing what I had to do to get the accolades that, fed my ability to keep moving forward. And if you know that about somebody on your team, work with that. I mean, I'm not the compliance person, but by golly, I can follow all the rules and I can make it happen. But if you get to pick your own team, pick that person on your team who likes that. Let them use that piece for sure.
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, it just really it comes down to making something that works for you. So we're lucky because we can pick our own team. But yeah, when you're a manager and you come into something that someone else has already made a mess of, or then you have to clean up or start a new culture within a business, that's a little bit more challenging, I think. So let's talk about your podcast. I love this podcast because it gives so much insight to people who are in that management position. What are some of the things that you've created a course. So now from your podcast, people can now go to a course. So tell us a bit about the course.
Well, I love to write. And I'm getting better at it. It's one of those things, you practice that skill set, you get better.
Yes, and we hear you're a 4-time best-selling author on Amazon. Thank you. You should just include that in there. That is amazing. Congratulations.
Yes. And I have followed the structure of short and sweet. And so most people like the best-selling books on Amazon.com for their Kindle ebooks. They are all 100 pages or less, and then you drop down to the 50 pages or less. So all of mine are like between 20 and 40 pages. I don't even hit the 50-page mark, and that's even with extra blank page for notes. Because people want something short, they want something sweet. So I found on Facebook a group of authors and the, what do you call those? Oh, the people who own the group, the company that owns the group. Mm-hmm. They gave this training on how to write a bestseller in 45 minutes. And so I did their webinar and I wrote a book in like 45 minutes, and it's called How Great Leaders Build Great Teams. And it became a bestseller on Amazon. I'm so excited. So I took that and I created an online course to further explore what's not really handled in the book, because again, it's a super short book. What you need to do to start building that team and do things better. We get bogged down in thinking it all has to happen overnight. And I screwed up yesterday, so I'm a failure, and I'm always going to be a failure. Well, nobody got there overnight. The first time that became true to me, there was a series on TV that I loved, and one of the actresses was probably in her 50s, and in my head, I thought, oh my God, how cool. She got married, she raised her family, and then she decided to be an actress like at 50, and she just made it overnight. Well, then when I researched her, come to find out, she had not ever been a stay-at-home mom. She had been an actress on Broadway for 30 years, and then they asked her to do this TV show. And it was like, oh my gosh, there really isn't any such thing as an overnight success. Yeah. You're not going to be a good manager overnight. That's number one. And number two, and I've done podcasts on this, and I bring it up in almost all my training sessions, and if I don't, I meant to. And that is, just because you didn't get it exactly right yesterday doesn't mean you can't do better tomorrow. So if you did not communicate what you expected of your people and they didn't do it right and it was a colossal failure, go in tomorrow, take ownership of your mistake, what you didn't do right, or how you could have explained it differently, and find a way to make it better. You build trust or rebuild trust by doing the right thing time and time again. And they may not believe you tomorrow when you go in and say, I screwed up. But if every day you're taking a step towards making it better, over time, it will improve.
Awesome. I love that advice, because that's advice we dish out too when it comes to podcasting. Like your first few episodes, if you're not embarrassed by them, you waited too long to do it, right? Like just keep like that, those small imperfect action steps each day consistently creates so much more movement and so much more change over time, doesn't it? Yeah, I
heard something I'm in a mastermind group, and the big thing was done is better than perfect. And it's
like
kind
that.
of the same thing with the podcast. do it, get it out there, and then you'll know what to do next time.
Yeah, exactly. And podcasting is such a long-term game too, right? It's not like immediate gratification and craziness at the beginning. It's long-term, and you'll see that growth. And like we were just looking at your podcast numbers and how, in August they were at a certain number, and now today in November, it's only the 11th of the month already. It's doubled since what that August number was. And that's only 3 months later. So that's something I want people to really keep in mind when it comes to podcasting. Like you don't necessarily come out of the gates with your guns blazing. Like you really build that momentum over time with the consistent action of just producing a show every week and showing up for your audience, because you don't know how many of those 400 or 500 people, 150 people, 200 people, you don't know how many of those people you're making an impact in. And you just got to show up there and deliver great content, and they will keep coming back and listening, right?
Well, that, and the other thing to follow up with that is I started a podcast because I didn't have an audience. Mm-hmm. I didn't have an audience. I had this online program, but it really wasn't getting any traction because I didn't have an audience. So I decided to do a podcast. Well, I have since met some people who have huge email lists. They have large client bases. And they're now all saying, oh my gosh, I am going to start a podcast next week. Mm-hmm. Well, they will probably have, 1,000, 2,000 downloads in the first month easily because they already have the audience. But if you're like me and you had zero audience, I think the number you gave me is since August, I've had over 2,500 downloads. Mm-hmm. And I'm, it's a shame we're doing this podcast because I want to jump up and down and get on the phone and call everybody out.
So awesome. Yeah. Congratulations. And I love that we can celebrate that, because it is from August to now. That's a lot of people that have listened to your show that would never have known that you were there had it not been for your podcast, which is amazing, right?
And then you told me I'm in the top 10% of iTunes podcasts. Mm-hmm. What? Nobody knows me. I'm in the middle of the country. I'm in Oklahoma. Nothing happens here, right? And guess what, Michelle? I kept doing what you told me to do. The other thing is, I had friends who, like you teach that when you do your first podcast, get hold of everybody you know and have them download it so you can create some spark and momentum in the online world. And my very bestest friend since I was 11 years old, I kept saying, did you download it? Did you download it? Did you listen to it? She was like, no, I'm busy. No, I'm busy. And then after like a week, I said, well, don't bother. You missed the boat, girlfriend. That ship has already sailed. She finally listened to it. She goes, oh my gosh, it was like 15 minutes. And I went, well, yeah, what did you think? She wouldn't listen to it because she thought it was going to be like an hour commitment. And she was an hour that week. And it was like, no, apparently in the podcasting world and in the book writing world, short and sweet little snippets is what people
definitely for sure. And if you think about who are you talking to? Busy managers, right? Like, hello, think about your audience. Do they have an hour to sit and listen? No, they want what you can deliver. And that's one of the things that we give people advice on too. Like, well, how long should a podcast be? Well, it should be how long it takes you to deliver what's important without the fluff. So whether that's 7 minutes, 15 minutes, or 30 minutes, or an hour, whatever it is, without like whatever's necessary to say within that time, right? Interesting.
I think the last time we talked, and I don't know if I have the notes in this notebook in front of me, but like my top 2 or 3 podcasts were 10 minutes or less.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's talk about those for a second. So we just talked about those off air for a second. So what you did, I told you what your top podcast episodes were. And what you did is you went and created a blog post from them, which I think that was really smart. So you're capitalizing on something that's being successful. People are downloading and listening to it. So let's now transcribe it, turn it into a blog post so that you can put it on your website as well. So great job. That was awesome.
Yes. And so then on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, then in my regular social media posting, I'm posting the link back to my website for those blog posts.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. And then that way you're not giving Apple all of your traffic either. You're bringing traffic back to your own website, which I think is great too. That's one of the things that's just come out recently from the podcast movement uh, conference this year. One of our clients, when she came back and reported that that's one of the things that they want to see people stop doing is like stop sending all your traffic to Apple or sending all your traffic to Google. Send all your traffic to your own website and put your podcast on there so that, and that makes sense because, at the end of the day, we're the one, you want to have traffic on your website to explore. So speaking about websites, Jennifer, where can we find out more information about you and what's your website? And I see you have your other books on your website. One of your other books on your website as well, which is Address the Stress, which I think is a really important one for managers as well.
Yes. So, and there's a way to put all your books to link it back to Amazon so you can get them, but I haven't really figured out that little step in the world. My last name is Takagi, and that's Takagi, and I'm sure that will be on the,
on the show notes for sure. Yeah.
But it's TakagiConsulting.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Jennifer Takagi or Takagi Consulting.
Awesome. And take a look. If you're a manager in your position too, you want to check out how Jennifer's done her podcast, go check out New Manager Media. And you'll find that on all of the major podcasting outlets because we put it everywhere, didn't we? Yeah. Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I look forward to catching up with you when we hit that 5,000 mark of downloads. So let's have another conversation then, see how things are going.
That sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
Thanks, Michelle.